Some questions arrive in your life so quietly that you do not even notice when they begin to guide you. For me, one of those questions was very simple. How do some people stay humble when the whole world is clapping for them? I remember the first time this question really settled into my chest. I was sitting alone in my small living room, late at night, a half-finished cup of tea on the table. A video interview was playing on the screen. It was one of those calm, unhurried conversations. Two familiar faces sat together, talking about life with a kind of softness you don't often see. Keanu Reeves and Morgan Freeman. They were not telling wild stories or boasting about anything. They spoke slowly, choosing their words with care, pausing often. They laughed at simple things. They admitted they did not know many answers. And yet, there was a quiet authority in the way they looked at the world, like people who had walked a long road and decided to carry their success lightly. As I watched, a part of me felt strangely unsettled. Not jealous, not impressed, instead, almost exposed. Because I could feel the difference. They had the kind of humility that did not seem designed for the camera. It looked like something that had grown roots over many years, watered by discipline, shaped by losses, held in place by deliberate choices. I paused the video and sat there in the dim light, listening to the faint city noise outside my window. I asked myself, almost in a whisper, if tomorrow the world suddenly admired you, would you stay the same? The honest answer, at that time, was, I didn't know. Looking back now, I realized that this question didn't appear from nowhere. It had been forming slowly, through the small cracks of my everyday life. I grew up in a place where success was loud. When someone did well, we were trained to show it. Bigger clothes, a flashier phone, a louder story. Humility was admired in theory, but in practice, it often looked like a costume we wore when we needed to appear good, then quietly folded away when nobody was watching. As I became an adult, I discovered that I was not immune to this. Whenever I achieved something, a good grade, a promotion, some public recognition, I felt a rush inside me. At first, it was a simple joy. But quickly, almost without my permission, it turned into something more dangerous, the urge to be seen as impressive. I started arranging my life around the eyes of other people. I checked how my work sounded when I spoke about it, rather than how it actually felt to do. I measured my days by reactions, not by meaning. I began to feel restless on the days when there was nothing to show off. Outwardly, I looked like a functioning adult, moving forward, building a life. Inwardly, it felt like I was building a mirror house, every wall reflecting me back to myself, until I could not remember where the real door was. This is why, that night, watching those two calm men speak about their lives, something inside me grew quiet. They spoke about discipline as if it was not a punishment, but a form of kindness to oneself. A way of staying honest. A way of keeping your feet on the ground when life tries to carry you away. They talked about simple habits, showing up on time, treating people well regardless of who is watching, choosing work for love of the craft rather than just the reward. None of it sounded glamorous. But somehow, in their voices, it felt like a path to the kind of life I secretly wanted. One that was not constantly at the mercy of other people's applause. That night did not change me instantly. Life rarely works like that. But it planted a seed of quiet suspicion. Maybe humility is not something you feel. Maybe it's something you practice. In the following months, I started to notice my own behavior with more clarity. There was a small moment at work that stays with me. I had finished a project that everyone liked. My manager praised it in front of the team. For the rest of that day, I kept reaching for my phone, opening social media, trying to subtly mention what I'd done, waiting for that familiar surge of validation. But something was different this time. As I caught myself writing and deleting posts, I heard a gentle inner question. Who are you doing this for? It wasn't an accusation. It felt more like someone putting a hand on my shoulder. When I sat with the question, I realized I wanted people to see me as capable, intelligent, successful. I wanted that image almost more than I wanted the quiet satisfaction of the work itself. That realization was uncomfortable, but it had a strange freedom in it too. Because once you see a pattern clearly, you can no longer pretend it isn't there. You can begin, clumsily and slowly, to choose differently. That night, I put my phone away earlier than usual. I made a cup of tea and sat alone at the table where I had watched that interview. I asked myself a simple, almost childlike question. If no one ever knew about this achievement, would it still matter to me? I waited for the answer. After a while, I felt a small yes surface, quiet but real. I felt proud of the effort, the patience, the long evenings of trying again and again. I realized that a large part of the joy I was seeking externally was already present inside me, in the simple memory of doing the work with care. That yes was small, but it was a beginning. Over time, I started creating tiny experiments in my daily life. Sometimes, when I did something good, I would deliberately not talk about it right away. Not in a self-denying, I must never share anything way, but as a gentle practice. Could I hold this moment inside me without immediately turning it into a performance? It felt awkward at first. There was a certain emptiness where I was used to receiving quick praise. I noticed how uncomfortable I was with that silence. In those quiet spaces, I began to see how deeply my identity had tangled itself with what others thought of me. It was like pulling at a knot, slowly and carefully, and finding more threads than I expected. Around the same time, I rewatched another calm conversation with those two men whose presence had stayed with me. They spoke not so much about success, but about loss, aging, and the passing of time. What struck me most was not what they had gained, but what they had let go of. They talked about friendships that drifted away, projects that failed, roles they didn't get, mistakes they made. And yet they spoke about these things without self-pity or bitterness. It sounded like they had slowly learned not to cling too tightly to any single identity. I realized something then. Humility is not just about acting modest when things go well. It's also about accepting, without drama, that you are not the center of the universe when things go wrong. Discipline, in that sense, is not just about strict routines or productivity. It is about how you choose to respond to reality every day. Do you react from ego, or do you move from a quieter place? As these ideas took root in me, I began to notice another pattern. I was often harsh with myself in the name of discipline. If I woke up late, I would tell myself I was lazy. If I failed to keep a habit, I would mentally criticize myself. There was a pressure behind my attempts to be better, as if I believed that only self-disgust could push me forward. One afternoon, while walking home, I remembered a line from that same conversation, that real discipline is not born from self-hatred, but from self-respect. It stopped me mid-step. I realized I had been using the word discipline like a stick to beat myself with, rather than a structure to hold myself kindly. The discipline I saw in those men, the calm, grounded, almost meditative way they spoke about life, did not look like punishment. It looked like choosing to live in alignment with what truly mattered, even when it was not exciting. That day, I decided to experiment with a different kind of discipline. Not the kind that says, if you fail, you are worthless, but the kind that says, you are worth showing up for, even on the small days. Practically, this meant small, quiet changes. I started waking up just a little earlier, not to chase more productivity, but to give myself space before the noise of the world entered. I would spend those first minutes in silence, just breathing, noticing my thoughts without immediately following them. Sometimes I would think about the question of humility, how easily the sense of self can swell when praised and shrink when criticized. Sitting there, I could watch those reactions rise and fall inside me, like waves. I began to see that I was not the waves themselves, but the shore they crashed against. This simple image helped me. When someone complimented me, I would feel the pleasant warmth, acknowledge it, and then gently let it pass, like water washing over the sand. When someone criticized me, I would feel the sting, breathe through it, and again, let it recede. It did not always work. There were days when a single harsh word could ruin my mood, or an absence of recognition left me feeling invisible. But over time, the practice softened something inside me. I no longer needed each interaction to confirm my value as strongly as before. In those quiet mornings, I also began to write. Not for publication, not for anyone's eyes but my own. I wrote about the moments I felt small, the times I felt secretly proud, the conversations that stayed with me. I wrote about that first night, the paused video, the question that had started all this. As I wrote, I could see my own contradictions more clearly, how I wanted to be humble yet secretly craved attention, how I admired discipline but often chose comfort, how I spoke about values I did not always live. Instead of judging myself, I tried to simply notice, to see myself as a work in progress, not a finished product. That, in itself, felt like a form of humility. There is a certain peace that comes when you stop trying to appear wise and simply allow yourself to be learning. I began to understand that the people I admired, not just those two famous men, but also quiet elders, honest friends, kind strangers, had likely gone through their own long journeys of self-correction. No one becomes grounded overnight. You do not wake up humble one morning just because you decide to be. You grow into it, through thousands of small choices. Saying "I don't know" when you truly don't. Listening fully when someone else speaks. Admitting when you are wrong. Showing up on days when nobody is watching. Letting go of the need to constantly explain your worth. These are not dramatic acts. They will not appear in any highlight reel. But over time, they shape the way you move through the world. They shape the person you become when no one is there to applaud you. One evening, after a long day, I found myself once again in my living room. The room was almost the same as that night years before, the soft hum of the city outside, the cup of tea cooling on the table. I clicked on another reflective conversation, not out of habit, but out of a quiet desire to sit in the presence of that same grounded energy. As I listened, something subtle dawned on me. I had spent so much of my life believing that humility was the opposite of confidence, that to be humble meant to shrink yourself, to downplay your gifts, to step back so others could shine. But what I saw in these men, and increasingly in the people around me whom I admired, was a different picture. They were not pretending to be less than they were. They were simply not obsessed with being more. True humility, I realized, is not about thinking less of yourself. It is about thinking of yourself less often. And discipline is the quiet mechanism that makes this possible. It gives your life a structure strong enough that you do not have to constantly protect your image. You know what you stand for. You know what you will show up for, even when nobody is clapping. As this understanding sank in, I felt a gentle loosening inside me, like a long-held breath being released. Over the next months and years, my life did not become extraordinary in any outward sense. I did not suddenly achieve wild success or dramatic recognition. In many visible ways, my days looked similar to anyone else's. Work, conversations, errands, quiet evenings. But internally, something continued to shift. I began to measure my days differently. Instead of asking, "What did I achieve?" I began to ask, "How did I behave?" Instead of, did people notice me? I asked, was I aligned with what I value? Some days, the answer was yes. I had been patient, honest, present. Other days, I could see where I had fallen back into impatience, comparison, or the desire to be admired. On those days, rather than drowning in guilt, I simply acknowledged it and tried again the next day. Slowly, my idea of success changed. Success became walking away from a conversation knowing I had listened more than I spoke. Success became showing up for a commitment even when nobody would have blamed me for canceling. Success became doing a task well, even if it was invisible. This kind of success is quiet. It rarely earns applause, but it carries a softness that sits easier on the heart. There is a simple scene that, for me, captures the essence of discipline behind a humble life. It is not anything grand, just an ordinary morning. The sun has not fully risen. The city is still half asleep. A man sits alone at his kitchen table. He has lived long enough to know most of his own flaws and to have made peace with many of them. He has known both praise and failure. His name may be recognized, or it may not. It doesn't matter. He has his routines: a glass of water, a moment of silence, a slow breakfast. He is not rushing, not scrolling, not calculating how to be impressive. He is simply preparing to show up for his day with as much honesty as he can. He will make mistakes, of course. He will forget his own wisdom at times. He will say something he regrets, or grow impatient, or feel ego rise in his chest. But he will also notice these moments more quickly now. Experience has taught him to gently return to himself, the way you guide a wandering child back home. That morning, if you look through the window, you might see nothing remarkable. Just a person sitting, breathing, thinking. You might not guess that inside that quiet frame lives a lifetime of